Laura Davis worked at the local hardware store, stationed in the section with screws, drill bits, and steel wire. Day after day, she organized inventory, helped customers find what they needed, and endured the subtle condescension that came with being a middle-aged woman in a male-dominated space. Most customers assumed she was just an divorced woman working part-time to McKean's meat. They'd walk past her to find a male employee, convinced that Sheckle didn't possibly understand the technical aspects of their projects. Laura had grown accustomed to the eye rolls, the patronizing explanations, and the requests to get someone who actualness about tools. On this particular Tuesday afternoon, a group of young soldiers wandered into the store, fresh from basic training. They carried themselves with the swagger of men what they'd seen it all. Their leader, a cocky 20-some with a buzz cut, spotted Laura arranging socket wrenches. "Hey lady," he called out loud enough for the entire store to hear. "Ever weepin'? You look like you spend your whole life in an office cubicle." Laura looked up briefly, offered apologetically, and continued with her work. "Connie help you find something?" The soldier exchanged glances and snickered. "Yeah, we need some specialized anti-recoil bolts, but I doubt you'd know what those are." Without missing a beat, Laura walked to aisle 7 and pulled out a box of vibration-dampening bolts with rubber washers. "These should work for your full modifications. They're rated for high-impact applications." The soldiers stared at the exact items they needed, but their surprise quickly turned back to mockery. "Lucky guess," one muttered as they headed to checkout. The loudest of the group made one final comment. "I bet you're real good at shooting price tags." That's when Laura's hands paused for just a moment. As she rang up the purchase, she looked directly at him, her voice steady and quiet. "I used to shoot things where the price was my own life." The soldiers laughed, assuming it was some kind of joke. They grabbed their bags and left, never giving her words a second thought. Button, her manager, who had overheard the conversation from behind the paint counter, noticed something different in Laura's eyes. Something that made him wonder if there was more to Laura Davis than met the eye. 2 weeks later, Sergeant Alan Thompson walked into the hardware store. He was head trainer at the local civilian marksmanship program and needed some equipment for the new training facility. As Laura helped him find the right mounting brackets, he noticed something that made him stop cold. A small tattoo peeked out from beneath her sleeve. It was barely visible, but Thompson recognized it immediately. The eagle globe and anchor with the cross horizontally. Only military snipers had that specific variation. "Excuse me," Thompson said carefully, "but I have Tosk. What unit were you with?" Laura's hands stilled on the inventory clipboard for a moment. She looked like she might not answer. 3rd Recon Battalion. But that was a different life. Thompson felt this pulse quicken. He'd heard stories about the legendary snipers from 3rd Recon, but he'd never met one. "What was your call sign?" "I'd rather not say." Laura's voice carried a finality that discouraged further questions. Thatening, Thompson couldn't shake his curiosity. He made some calls and reached out to contacts in the military database. It took 3 days, but finally, he got a call back that left him speechless. "Laura Davis, call sign Viper 9. The voice on the phone confirmed. "She holds the record for longest confirmed kill in desert conditions. 12 yards in Azan storm. The woman is a legend." Thompson stared at his phone. After hanging up, Viper 9, the Laura Davis who worked at the hardware store, was the same sniper who had saved an NTR squad in Allenbar. The same sniper whose hot had taken out an insurgent commander and prevented a devastating ambush. He had to do something. The following week, Thompson approached Laura with a proposal. "We're having a civilian marksmanship event this Saturday. Would you consider helping out? Just basic instruction showing people proper stance and breathing techniques." Laura hesitated. "I don't really do that anymore, Sergeant. You understand, but we have a lot of young people coming out. Some are considering military service. They could learn from someone with real experience." After a long pause, Laura nodded. "I'll help with basics, but I'm not there to show off or tell war stories." Saturday arrived, gray and overcast. Laura showed up in old fatigues and a worn baseball cap, looking every bit like someone wanted to blend into the background. She positioned herself near the equipmentable, helping participants adjust the earphones and check their safety equipment. A young woman named Emily was struggling with her stance. Laura quietly approached and made a few gentle erections. "The wind's pushing from left," she said softly. "Adjust your aim point about half a degree to compensate." Emily fired. The bullet struck just off center, the best shot made all day. Thompson watched from across the range, impressed, but not surprised. Even in a support role, Laura's expertise was evident. She had an eye for detail that only came from years of precision shooting under pressure. But neither of them noticed that the group of soldiers from the hardware store had shown up to watch the civilian event. They stood at the back of the crowd, still unaware that the woman they'd mocked was standing just 50 feet away. As the official training session wound down, the soldiers from the hardware store made their presence known. They swaggered over to the shooting line, eager to show off their skills to the civilian participants. "Mind if we show these folks how it's really done?" the loud one asked. "Sure, but follow all safety protocols," Thompson replied, though he was irradiating what might happen next. The soldiers set up their targets at the 100-yard line and began taking shots. They were confident, hitting the targets constantly, but without any particular precision. After a few rounds, they noticed Laura helping clean up the equipment stations. "Hey, isn't that the hardware store lady?" one of them said loud enough for everyone to hear. "What's doing here?" The group leader, Collins, walked over with a smirk. "Decided to learn about real guns instead of just selling screws." Laura continued packing equipment cases, not responding to the taunt. "I bet she's never even held a rifle," Collins continued, playing to his audience. "Probably thinks the safety is a seatbelt." Thompson felt his jaw clench, but he waited to see how Laura would handle it. Collins picked up a challenge coin from the equipmentable. "Tell you what, hardware lady, see that target at 100 yards? I'll put this coin on it. If you can hit it, I'll buy every tool in your store. When you miss, you admit you don't belong here." The other soldiers laughed and egged him on. Several civilian participants had stopped what they were doing to watch confrontation. Laura finally looked up from the equipment case. "I'd rather not." "Come on," Collins pressed. "What's worst that could happen? You embarrass yourself in front of Pia Pluho. Already know you're out of your element?" Thompson had heard enough. He stepped forward, holding out his personal rifle. "Laura, would you mind?" Laura looked at the weapon, then at Thompson, then at the gathering crowd. She could walk away. She could let them have their moment and go back to her quiet life. Instead, she reached for the rifle. "I'll need a moment to check Theskip," she said quietly. Collins jogged down to the 100-yard target and taped the coin to the center. It was a standard quarter about the size of a postage stamp at that distance. He waved his arms dramatically as he jogged back. "There you go, Annie Oakley. Good luck." Laura knelt down and examined the rifle. She checked the scope, tested the bolt action, and felt the weight of the weapon. It had been 3 years since she'd held a rifle, but the movements came back naturally. She pulled her baseball cap low over her eyes and settled into position. The crowd fell silent, watching this unremarkable woman prepared to take an impossible shot. Laura controlled her breathing, feeling the familiar calm that came with absolute focus. She calculated the wind, the distance, the slight tremor in her hands from too much coffee that morning. All the variables that at once meant the difference between life and death. She squeezed the trigger. The coin exploded into two perfect halves. The silence that followed was deafening. Colin stood frozen, his mouth hanging open. The other soldiers looked like they'd seen a ghost. Thompson steps forward, his voice carrying across the entire range. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet Viper 9 Laura Davis, formerly of 3rd Recon Battalion. She saved 8 soldiers with a single shot in Allenbar and holds the record for longest confirmed kill in desert conditions." One of the younger soldiers, a kid who couldn't have been more than 19, steps forward with tears in his eyes. "Ma'am, my father was Sergeant David Walker. Had told me about you. He said you saved his life." Laura looked at the young man, recognition dawning in her eyes. Jimmy Walker's boy? Yes, ma'am. He talks about you every Veterans Day, says he owes you everything. Laura stood up and handed the rifle back to Thompson. Without another word, shulked toward the parking lot, leaving behind a crowd of people who would never forget what they'd witnessed. Collins finally found his voice. I had no idea, ma'am, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but Laura was already gone. Laura returned to work the following Monday as if nothing had happened. She organized inventory, helped customers, and endured the usual condescension with same quiet dignity she'd always shown. But Tom, her manager, had heard about what happened at the range. Without asking permission, he printed out an old newspaper clipping he'd found in line. Marine Sniper Save Squad in heroic long-range shot. He framed it and hung it next to the employee's schedule. The change was subtle, but immediate. Word spread through the community faster than Laura could have imagined. The soldiers who had mocked her began showing up at the store, not to buy anything, but to pay their respects. They would nod respectfully when they saw her, and she would nod back. Collins came in on Tuesday morning looking uncomfortable but determined. Ma'am, I wanted to apologize properly. What I said was inexcusable. Laura looked up from her paperwork. You didn't know. People make assumptions. It's human nature. But that's no excuse for disrespect, Collins replied. I've been thinking about what you said about shooting things where the price was someone's life. I never understood what that meant until now. Laura eyed the young man for a moment. You'll if you stay in long enough. Just remember that when you do, every shot matters. Every decision has consequence. Collins nodded solemnly and left without buying anything. On Wednesday, a little boy came into the store with his mother. While she shopped for garden supplies, he wandered over to Laura's counter. Are you really a soldier? He asked, with the blunt curiosity of childhood. Laura knelt down to his level. I was a Marine, but that was a long time ago. What's the difference? Laura smiled, the first genuine smile Anione had seen from her in months. Marines are a little more stubborn. She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a small plastic pin. It was nothing special, just a generic American flag pin that had come with a Veterans Organization mailer. But to the boy it might as well have been a medal opener. Can you keep this safe for me? Laura asked. And when you're older, remember that real heroes don't need to tell everyone they're heroes. The boy nodded solemnly and clutched the pin like a treasure. His mother, who had been watching from the next aisle, wiped away a tear. Laura Davis never wanted anyone to remember her past. But sometimes society needs to be reminded that humility and skill are not mutually exclusive. In an age where everyone wants to stand out, there are people who simply want to live quietly, but when needed, they remain our guardians. The truth is, extraordinary people walk among yous every day. They stock shelves, teach children, fix cars, and answer phones. They don't wear their achievements like armor or demand recognition for their service. They simply do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. Laura's story reminds us that assumptions are dangerous. The person you dismiss today might be the one who once stood between civilization and chaos. The quiet woman at the hardware store might be the Samarine who saved lives with precision and courage. If you're watching this story unfold, perhaps you, too, have been underestimated. Remember, your worth isn't determined by others' recognition, it's determined by what you carry within yourself, quietly and with dignity. Some walls don't need to announce their strength. They simply stand ready when the world needs them.